notice, and they do, and they're devastating to the communities where they occur. A basic recap of what I spoke about this morning, that at 9:06 this morning, the call dispatch received a call of shots fired at the Wright House Distribution Center located at 1501 Perryman Road. Immediately, police officers from across the county responded and were on scene in approximately 5 minutes. Law enforcement, fire, and EMS units quickly paired up and went into the warehouse area, to the office area, and to the warehouse area to look for the suspect and to look for victims and provide treatment where appropriate. At this time, I can confirm that there are 7 people who have been shot in today's incident, including the shooter. 3 people are suffering from injuries which they are expected to survive. 3 others are victims of our shooter who lost their lives here today. 2 at the scene and then 1 at the hospital. And the 4th loss of life is the victim. Is the suspect, our shooter. The victims' names we are not in a position to release at this time. We still have to make notifications, and that's still a process that's ongoing. So we are not prepared to release the victims' names. We will get them out as soon as is possible. Our suspect is a lone female suspect, age 26, who had a last known address in Baltimore County. She has died at the hospital from a fatal injury, self-inflicted gunshot wound. It appears, again, as I said this morning, that she was armed with 1 handgun and several magazines. No shots were fired by any law enforcement responder. Our detectives are still working to establish a timeline, but at this time, what we know is that the suspect was a temporary employee employed here at the distribution center. She had reported for her workday as usual, and around 9 a.m. the shooting began, striking victims both outside the business and inside the facility. We do not at this time have a motive for this senseless crime. In the investigation, again, even though we're hours into this, it's still early in an investigation of this size and scope. But over the last several hours, our law enforcement teams, again from all the agencies represented behind me, have been actively clearing and searching the 210 square foot facility. It's a massive building, and that's only a third of it, and they've been through all parts of the one building. 2,010 square feet are all just Rite Aid. There's 2 other businesses that are equally big, and our law enforcement officers had to clear that entire building. At the same time, our detectives have been working tirelessly to interview anyone who was in the building or who might have information to help us further this investigation. I believe a short while ago we tweeted out the phone number, again, that's being answered at the dispatch center. If there's people with information that can offer us related to the incident here today, to please reach out, and so our detectives can be in contact with you. We are not releasing the suspect's information at this time. I've heard that it's already out in the public, but from our standpoint, the family there has not been notified. And again, the investigation's early, so I will not be releasing that name at this time. Again, we have a family reunification center set up at the Level Volunteer Firehouse. And as I said, this is early on in this investigation, and as more information, I just ask you to be patient. As more information comes available, we will share it just as timely as we can. I'm going to ask the county executive to offer a few thoughts, and then I'll take a few questions with the caveat that if I didn't mention it, there's probably very little I can speak about. Sir.
Thank you, Sheriff. As I mentioned this morning, we certainly thank our partners from around the state. Governor Hogan's called and checked on us early this morning. I see Senator Cardin has arrived, and Senator Cardin called to offer his assistance. So we, unfortunately, we are become accustomed to this. I want to reassure Harford County citizens that, in fact, although this is the unpredictable, we train for the unpredictable. Our Sheriff's Department, Fire, EMS, all our allied agencies, and our volunteers performed perfectly the day as they carried out their duty to isolate and bring this incident to a closure quickly and safely throughout the community. So we drill for this, and they performed at the top of their game today to do that. we move on, we're going to reunite the families and provide services to the survivors. Work with Rite Aid. Rite Aid's one of our original distribution warehouses in Harford County and a partner that goes back over 20 years. And so we will work with them to rebuild and bring their facility back, both through human resources and through capital, to make sure they have a bright future here. So our thoughts and prayers go out to those victims. As county executive, I am grateful for the men and women that stand behind me, that when I listen to the radio, risk their lives to enter a warehouse where they don't know if there's a shooter, they don't know how many victims they have, and yet they go in, find the situation, and bring it to a closure. So to all of our public safety first responders, I say thank you to all of them, and to my partner, Jeff Gahler, the sheriff. We unfortunately have perfected this, and I hope that we don't have to do this again in the next 10 years or ever. But we've got a lot of problems in this country to solve to bring these kind of incidents to a closure. But thank you, Sheriff.
Senator.
Well, first to the county exec, thank you for your leadership here in Harford County. On behalf of your federal delegation, our offices have been in touch. Senator Van Hollen and Congressman Rubersberger, my office, been in touch. I'm pleased that our federal agencies are working in cooperation with the sheriff and with the county, and we know that the FBI's been involved. We know that ATF's been involved and DEA's been involved. We just want you to know that we are here to partner with you to get as much help as possible to understand what happened, and to obviously reach out to those families, the victims. Our hearts go out to them. As the county exec said, this happens all too frequently, and it's a tragic situation. We are so proud of the work of our first responders, the work that they do, entering places where there is incredible risk and danger in order to bring as much calm as possible. So we thank our first responders, and we want you to know that the federal team is here to work with the county, with the state, do everything we can to help in the investigation and to help the families.
Thanks, sir.
Excuse me, sir. Where did the suspect shoot herself? And do you know what part of the body that the shot was in and that caused her to die?
Any problem? The suspect shot herself in the head.
Have you ruled out a connection to terrorism at this point?
No, we do not have a motive yet, so everything is being explored. That will be explored, but that is not high. I wouldn't say it's high on the possibility scale at this point in time.
Can you say whether she started outside and then moved inside the building, or sort of the route?
Yeah, it's our understanding, and again, I'm going to qualify this with the fact that this is early on in the investigation. Our detectives have so much work to do, but yes, we believe the shooting incident began outside and then moved into the front of the building.
Do you know where?
How long did she work there?
We do not.
Clarify numbers. There were 3 victims dead, 3 victims injured, 1.
We have 7 people who have sustained gunshot wounds today, including the shooter. We have 6 victims, 2 of which are going to, God willing, they will survive, and then 3 who have lost her. Am I doing the math right?
No, one more time.
One more.
We have.
Could you one more time?
Sir, what about the weapon? What details about that?
Would you clarify the numbers one more time?
Yeah, 7 injured by gunfire, 4 are deceased, including the suspect.
Did the suspect say anything that anyone is aware of, and did it appear she was targeting a particular individual outside?
Nothing has been brought. I'll get it.
About the weapon right there?
Yeah, nothing that has been brought to my attention at this point. The motive, we are still trying to work on any kind of motive for it, so I don't have an answer for that right now.
Sure. Can you tell us about what weapon she used?
It was a single weapon, a 9mm Glock, which was registered and owned by the suspect.
We have one right here, sir.
Sheriff, how did law enforcement take the shooter into custody?
She was injured by a self-inflicted gunshot wound on the floor. She was in critical condition from the outset at the time we responded. So she was transported to an area hospital where she has since passed away.
Sheriff, had this facility
been the source of any other calls from your department? I mean, have there been problems there, perhaps involving the shooter or involving someone else?
None that we are familiar with, and certainly none involving the suspect in this case that we're familiar with. The whole area here is a large business area, as you see. So the deputies and often our municipal partners and the state police are down in this area for different calls. Obviously nothing to this degree, but nothing involving nothing related to this incident or involving this suspect.
How many magazines? How many magazines?
I believe there were 2, perhaps 3, but again, and as I said, I'm going to qualify things with the fact that we are early into the investigation.
How many shots fired roughly, do you know?
I do not know.
And this gentleman right here, sir.
How many people were in the building that you cleared, or how many people were there at the time of the shooting roughly? Obviously, you don't mind them.
I don't know how many employees are in the Rite Aid building. Do we have an idea? Yeah. Throughout the 3 buildings that make up the complex, there were probably more than 100. There were quite a few people. 1/3 of that huge building is Rite Aid. So I don't know how many were in the Rite Aid building.
Sir, we have one over here. Ms. Johnson.
Were there private security guards there? Were they armed at all?
I understand that Rite Aid employs private security, but we do not believe that there were any there at the time of the incident.
And we have one right here.
At the time of the shooting?
She was a temporary employee working her normal work day. I don't know what time that began, but who reported for her normal work day today at the business.
Any idea how she got in with these weapons?
I do not have an answer for that.
We have one over here.
She had key access to the building?
I don't know if she had key access or the employees. I don't know how the access works for Rite Aid. That would be a question for investigators as they work through, or the company itself later on.
How long has she been a temporary employee?
We have ages and the sexes. We're not going to be releasing that at this point. We will get that out through our public information officer just as soon as we can. We don't want people to see this and say, a 26, and this is not the case, but a 26-year-old female, and then they're missing someone who fits that description. So we are not releasing any information as to anything that could nail down the identity of our victims.
You have confirmed that all those that were involved were Rite Aid employees?
No. Detectives may have at this point, but not that it's come to my attention. They were all in the Rite Aid building. We believe them to be all employees, but is that 100%? No, it's not.
You have one down here, sir.
Do you believe the victims knew the suspect? Any relationship, or do you think it was a random just workplace shooting, trying to shoot up as many people as possible?
I do not know how well they knew each other. She was employed there. Apparently it was not her first day, so there had to be some knowledge of the suspect by the employees of that business.
We have one over here, sir.
Do you have conditions on the 3 people?
I've just been told that they do not look like they're life-threatening injuries.
Any surveillance cameras or footage that you can pull from on this?
There's cameras on the property and inside the property, which our detectives will be, have looked at and will be obviously analyzing very closely to try to get us a better picture of everything that took place there. I know nothing. In these few hours, I know nothing about what security there is or is not.
We'll take one more question.
What hospital did the suspect die in?
I'm not sure which hospital she went to.
Local or was it in Baltimore?
Trauma centers, local trauma centers.
Local trauma center. So
The shooting was inside.
I don't believe it was Harford. I do not know.
It was not Harford.
The shooting was inside or outside?
Both. There were people shot inside and outside the business. We believe it began outside and moved inside.
And this will be our last question.
Are you executing a search warrant currently on her home in Baltimore County?
There are multiple addresses associated with the suspect, so we are chasing all leads as any police department who finds themselves in this unfortunate position of dealing with such a tragic incident. We'll chase them as far until they end. Vehicles and homes, yes.
And that's it.
All right. Thank you very much. We will get something out as soon as we can through Christy Hopkins and our PIO office. Thank you.
We do not expect another full press briefing today. Any additional information that we have will come out via our social media feeds. We're hopeful that by the end of the day, probably by your 11 o'clock news, that we'll be able to release the information on the suspect, but we're not going to hold another press briefing today. All right, thank you so much.